My story begins not with a single dramatic moment of revelation, but with a quiet, persistent yearning that echoed through my entire life. From my earliest days, I carried within me a deep and unshakable belief in God. It was not something I was taught in a formal, structured way, but rather an innate feeling, a certainty that there was a power greater than myself, a creator who had fashioned the world with purpose and care. This feeling was a constant companion, a silent hum beneath the noise of daily life. Yet, while the belief was strong, it felt untethered, like a ship without a harbor. I looked at the world around me, at the various paths people followed, and wondered where my own spiritual home might be. I was a seeker, constantly searching for a place where my soul could finally feel at rest. My upbringing was unconventional, a mixture of different influences that left me with many questions but few concrete answers. I was surrounded by big personalities and strong opinions, yet when it came to matters of faith, there was a void. I drifted through various spiritual ideas, exploring different philosophies and attending different places of worship, always hoping to find the piece that was missing. I would dip my toes into the waters of New Age spirituality, read books on Eastern philosophies, and even try to connect with the Christian traditions of my culture. Each exploration taught me something valuable, but none of them felt like the complete truth I was looking for. The feeling of being an outsider persisted. I was a guest in other people's spiritual houses, but never a true member of the family. The big events of my life, especially becoming a mother, amplified this search for meaning and connection. Holding my children in my arms, I felt the miracle of life in a profound and overwhelming way. I would look at their tiny, perfect hands and feel an immense sense of gratitude towards the Creator I had always believed in. This was no longer an abstract concept, it was a powerful, tangible reality. I wanted to give my children a spiritual foundation, a sense of purpose, and a connection to God that I felt I lacked. This desire pushed my search into a new gear. It was no longer just about my own peace, it was about building a legacy of faith for the next generation, and I knew I had to find the right path for us all. This lifelong search was, in essence, a search for a direct and personal relationship with God. I was tired of intermediaries, of complicated rituals that seemed to obscure rather than reveal the divine. I longed for a simple, clear connection, a way to speak to my Creator without feeling lost in translation. I imagined a faith that was practical, that integrated into every aspect of daily life, from the way you treated your neighbor to the way you conducted your business. I wanted a spiritual framework that was both profound and accessible, something that could guide me through life's challenges and celebrate its joys. This deep-seated desire for a direct line to the divine was the compass that would eventually, unexpectedly, point me towards Islam. My journey towards Islam did not begin with reading a book or attending a lecture, it started with people. Before I knew much about the religion, I began to meet Muslims in various contexts, through my work as a journalist and through my travels. These were not the caricatures I had often seen portrayed in the media, but ordinary people living their lives with an extraordinary sense of peace and purpose. What struck me most was their unwavering devotion. I saw how their faith was not just a Sunday activity, but the very bedrock of their existence. It informed their actions, their words, and their interactions with the world. I was intrigued by this level of commitment, a stark contrast to the spiritual ambiguity I had felt for so long. One of the first things that truly captivated me was the act of prayer. I would see my new friends and colleagues pause their day, no matter how busy, to turn towards Mecca and connect with their Lord. There was a beautiful simplicity and a powerful humility in this act. They didn't need a special building or a designated priest. They could create a sacred space wherever they were. They would simply lay down a mat, stand in quiet reverence, and speak directly to God. This was the direct connection I had been searching for my entire life. It was personal, intimate, and accessible. It demonstrated a relationship with the divine that was alive and active, woven into the fabric of every single day. As I spent more time in the Middle East, I was welcomed into the homes of Muslim families. Here, I witnessed a hospitality and generosity that was deeply touching. I saw how faith translated into kindness, into a genuine concern for the well-being of others, whether they were family, neighbors, or even a visiting stranger like myself. They shared their food, their stories, and their time with an open-heartedness that was rooted in their belief that every guest was a blessing from God. This was not a performance. It was a way of life. It was in these simple, everyday moments, sharing a meal, laughing with their children, caring for their elders, that I saw the beauty of Islam shining most brightly. These encounters began to slowly dismantle the misconceptions I had held. I had, like many in the West, been exposed to a narrative of Islam that was filled with fear and suspicion, but the people I met showed me a different reality. They were generous, funny, intelligent, and profoundly spiritual. They spoke of their love for God and the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, with a sincerity that was impossible to doubt. Their faith gave them strength in hardship and gratitude in times of ease. I started to wonder if this path, which seemed to bring so much peace and structure to their lives, could also be the home that my own restless soul had been searching for. The seeds of curiosity had been planted, and they were beginning to grow. My work as a journalist often took me to places of great political and social significance, but one trip to Iran led me to a place of profound spiritual power that would change the course of my life forever. I found myself in the city of Qom, standing at the entrance to the shrine of Fatima Masumeh. I was not a Muslim at the time, just a curious observer swept along by the energy of the place. The air was thick with devotion, a palpable feeling that went beyond words. Thousands of people moved with a shared purpose, their faces a mixture of hope, reverence, and supplication. I felt a sense of awe, a feeling of being in a place where heaven and earth seemed to meet. Hesitantly, I stepped inside. The sheer beauty of the shrine was breathtaking. Intricate mosaics of blue and gold tiles spiraled up towards a grand dome, reflecting the light in 1,000 different directions. The craftsmanship was a testament to a deep love and reverence for the sacred. Yet, it was not just the physical beauty that moved me. It was the atmosphere. I saw people from all walks of life, rich and poor, old and young, united in their devotion. They were crying, praying, and touching the ornate grille of the tomb, pouring out their hearts to God in this holy space. There was an intensity of emotion that I had never witnessed before, a raw and honest communication with the divine. Feeling a little overwhelmed, I found a quiet corner to sit and simply observe. I watched a woman nearby, her face streaked with tears as she whispered her prayers. I saw an old man, his hands raised in supplication, his expression one of deep concentration and hope. In that moment, something inside me shifted. I felt an overwhelming urge to pray as well, to join in this collective conversation with God. I wasn't sure what to say or how to say it, but I closed my eyes and let the feelings in my heart flow. I spoke to the Creator I had always believed in, and for the first time I felt like He was truly listening. In the stillness of that shrine, surrounded by the quiet murmurs of 1,000 prayers, I felt a profound sense of peace wash over me. It was a feeling of coming home. All the confusion, all the searching, all the spiritual restlessness that had defined my life seemed to melt away. A voice in my heart, clear and gentle, whispered, "You are home." I left the shrine that day with a sense of clarity I had never known. I knew with a certainty that resonated in the very core of my being that my journey had led me to the doorstep of Islam. The experience in Qom was not the end of my search, but it was the definitive signpost that pointed the way forward. The journey from that powerful moment in Qom to formally embracing Islam was a gradual one. It was not a sudden, impulsive decision, but a slow and thoughtful process of learning and internalizing. I began to read the Quran, not as a critic or an academic, but with an open heart, seeking guidance and understanding. The words on the page seemed to speak directly to the questions I had held for so long. It spoke of one God, merciful and compassionate, and it laid out a clear path for living a life of purpose and submission to Him. Each verse I read felt like another piece of the puzzle falling into place, creating a picture of a faith that was both logical and deeply spiritual. Parallel to my reading, I continued to seek out conversations with Muslims. I asked countless questions, some simple, some complex, about theology, practice, and the challenges of living as a Muslim in the modern world. I was met with patience and a genuine desire to share knowledge. They explained the 5 pillars of Islam, the importance of charity, the stories of the prophets, and the role of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, as the final messenger. This period of learning was crucial. It wasn't about being convinced by clever arguments, but about seeing how the principles of the faith created a coherent and beautiful worldview that resonated with my own innate beliefs. The practical changes started slowly, even before I had officially converted. I found myself becoming more mindful of my actions and words. I tried to be more patient, more charitable, and more honest in my daily life, inspired by the teachings I was learning. The idea of praying 5 times a day, which once seemed like a daunting task, began to feel like a welcome rhythm, a way to punctuate the day with moments of gratitude and reflection. I started to dress more modestly, not because anyone told me to, but because it felt like a natural expression of a growing inner sense of humility and a desire to be valued for my mind and character rather than my appearance. Finally, the day came when the internal conviction was so strong that it had to be expressed outwardly. The Shahada, the declaration of faith, is the gateway to Islam. It is the simple yet profound statement, I bear witness that there is no God but God, and I bear witness that Muhammad is the messenger of God. For weeks, these words had been whispering in my heart. Now, the time had come to say them aloud. It felt less like a choice and more like an inevitability, the natural conclusion of a lifelong search. I knew in my soul that this was the truth, and I was ready to declare it to the world and, most importantly, to God. The moment I recited the Shahada was both climactic and wonderfully simple. I was in the company of a few Muslim sisters who had been guiding me, their faces beaming with joy. As the words left my lips, a wave of emotion washed over me, a mixture of relief, joy, and a profound sense of peace. It felt as if a heavy burden I had been carrying my entire life had finally been lifted from my shoulders. The feeling of being spiritually homeless was gone, replaced by a deep and calming sense of belonging. I was no longer a seeker on the outside looking in. I was now part of a global family, a community of over 1 billion people united by the same declaration of faith. In the hours and days that followed, I felt a strange and beautiful sense of being reborn. The world looked different, brighter. It was as if a veil had been lifted from my eyes, and I could now see the signs of God everywhere. In the beauty of a sunset, in the kindness of a stranger, in the laughter of my children. There was an immense sense of gratitude that filled my heart, a thankfulness for being guided to this path. I felt clean, as if all my past mistakes had been washed away, and I had been given a fresh start, a clean slate upon which to build a new life dedicated to pleasing my Creator. This initial euphoria was a powerful and motivating force. Of course, the spiritual high was accompanied by the very practical reality of learning how to be a Muslim. The first time I stood to perform the formal prayer, the Salah, I felt clumsy and awkward. I had a piece of paper with the Arabic words and a diagram of the movements propped up in front of me. I stumbled over the pronunciation and felt unsure of every posture. Yet, even in that fumbling attempt, there was a profound sense of connection. I knew that God saw my effort, my intention, and my sincerity. Each prayer was a lesson in humility and perseverance, and slowly, with practice, the movements and words began to flow more naturally, becoming a source of immense comfort and strength. This new beginning was filled with a mix of exhilarating joy and humbling challenges. Simple things like remembering to say Bismillah, in the name of God, before eating, or Alhamdulillah, all praises for God, after, took conscious effort to become habits. I was a beginner, a student in a new school of life. There was so much to learn, from the stories of the prophets to the proper way to perform ablution before prayer, but every small step felt like a victory, a move closer to God. The journey had just begun, and while I knew the path would not always be easy, I was filled with an unshakable sense of hope and purpose. One of the most visible and significant changes in my new life was the decision to wear the hijab, the Islamic headscarf. This was not a step I took lightly. In the Western world, the hijab is often misunderstood, seen as a symbol of oppression rather than a statement of faith. For me, however, it felt like a deeply personal and empowering choice. It was an outward manifestation of the inner transformation that had taken place. It was a way of signaling to the world and to myself that my primary identity was now as a servant of God. It was a declaration that my self-worth was not tied to conforming to societal standards of beauty, but to my relationship with my Creator. The first time I walked out of my house wearing the hijab was a nerve-wracking experience. I felt as though every eye was on me. I was suddenly visible in a way I had never been before. People's reactions were mixed. Some offered smiles of support, others stared with curiosity, and a few looked at me with suspicion or even hostility. It was a powerful lesson in social dynamics and prejudice. The hijab became a filter, revealing the preconceived notions people held. It forced me to develop a thicker skin and to become more confident in my identity, relying on God's approval rather than the approval of strangers. Over time, wearing the hijab became a source of liberation. It freed me from the constant pressure to look a certain way, to spend hours on my hair, or to worry about my appearance. It allowed me to engage with the world on my own terms. People had to interact with my mind, my personality, and my character, rather than just my physical form. It was a shield that provided a sense of security and privacy, allowing me to move through the world with a quiet confidence. It became a constant reminder of my faith and my commitment, a physical touchstone that helped keep me mindful of God throughout my day. The hijab also connected me instantly to a global sisterhood. When I would see another woman in hijab, there was an immediate unspoken bond. A simple smile or a nod of acknowledgement would pass between us, a silent greeting of Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. It made me feel part of a vast and diverse community, united by a shared symbol of faith and devotion. This sense of sisterhood was a great source of comfort and strength, especially in moments when I felt isolated or misunderstood. The hijab was more than just a piece of cloth. It was a key that unlocked a new world of identity, community, and spiritual grounding. Embracing a new faith is a deeply personal journey, but it is one that inevitably impacts the people closest to you. My decision to become a Muslim was met with a range of reactions from my family and friends. Some were confused, others were concerned, and a few were worried that I was joining a faith they didn't understand. It was a challenging time filled with difficult conversations. I had to learn to be patient and to explain my decision from a place of love and conviction, not defensiveness. My goal was never to cut ties or build walls, but to build bridges of understanding between my old life and my new one. I made a conscious effort to show my family that the core of who I was had not changed. In fact, I explained that Islam was making me a better person, a more patient daughter, a more caring sister, and a more mindful mother. I wanted them to see the positive fruits of my faith through my actions, not just my words. I emphasized the common ground, the shared values of love, compassion, and family that are central to both my culture and my new religion. It was important for them to know that I still loved them deeply, and that my new path was about adding to my life, not subtracting from it. The support I received from the Muslim community was a lifeline during this period of transition. Wise imams and experienced Muslim sisters offered invaluable advice. They constantly reminded me of the importance of maintaining family ties, quoting the verses from the Quran and the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that emphasize kindness to parents and relatives. They advised me to be gentle, to be the best example of my faith, and to pray for my family's hearts to be softened. This guidance was crucial, as it prevented me from falling into the trap of isolation, which can be a great danger for new converts. Over time, through patience and consistent effort, many of those initial fears and misunderstandings began to fade. My family saw that I was happier, more at peace, and more grounded than ever before. They saw that my faith brought a beautiful structure and meaning to my life. While they may not have fully understood my choice, they came to respect it. The journey taught me a valuable lesson. Conversion is not about leaving your old life behind entirely. It is about integrating your new faith in a way that enriches your existing relationships and allows you to become a source of light and goodness for everyone around you, Muslim or not. While the spiritual joy of finding Islam was immense, it would be dishonest to pretend that the path was without its challenges. The journey of a new Muslim is not just about a single declaration of faith. It is a lifelong process of learning, growing, and striving. One of the biggest challenges was simply the sheer amount of new information to absorb. Learning the Arabic for prayers, understanding the basic principles of Islamic law, and familiarizing myself with the life of the Prophet and his companions was a steep learning curve. At times it felt overwhelming, and I had to constantly remind myself to be patient and take it one step at a time. Another significant challenge was navigating my new identity in a society that is often wary of Islam. I had to deal with misconceptions and stereotypes on a regular basis. Simple acts like praying in a public space or explaining my dietary restrictions sometimes led to awkward or even hostile encounters. This constant need to explain and defend my faith could be emotionally draining. It forced me to develop a strong inner resolve and to anchor my confidence not in the opinions of others, but in my connection with God. These experiences, while difficult, ultimately strengthened my faith and made me more articulate in sharing its true message of peace and justice. There were also internal struggles. The ego, or nafs as it's known in Islam, does not simply disappear after the Shahada. I had to work on cultivating virtues like patience, humility, and forgiveness, and to fight against negative traits like anger, arrogance, and gossip. This internal jihad, or struggle, is a central part of the Muslim's life. There were days when I felt my faith was strong, and days when I felt weak and faltered. It was during these moments that the support of the community and the habit of regular prayer became so crucial, serving as a spiritual anchor to bring me back to the right path. Perhaps one of the most subtle but persistent challenges was finding a balance. There was a temptation, common among new converts, to become overly zealous or to isolate oneself from mainstream society. I had to learn to be a Muslim living in the West, to engage with my culture while holding firm to my principles. It meant figuring out how to celebrate holidays with my non-Muslim family in a way that was respectful to all, or how to navigate a workplace environment that might not align with Islamic values. This balancing act required wisdom, patience, and constant prayer for guidance. The challenges were real, but each one was an opportunity for growth and a means of drawing closer to God. To anyone who finds themselves on a similar journey of spiritual seeking, my first and most important piece of advice is this: be gentle with yourself and take it slow. The path to God is a marathon, not a sprint. There is no need to rush into changing every aspect of your life overnight. Let your faith grow organically, like a seed that needs time to sprout and put down roots. Focus on the foundational beliefs first, the oneness of God and the importance of prayer. The other practices and changes will come naturally as your love and understanding deepen. Do not let the feeling of being overwhelmed discourage you. Every single step, no matter how small, is valued by God. My second piece of advice is to never abandon your family. Do not see your conversion as a reason to cut ties or create division. Your family is a sacred trust, and Islam commands you to treat them with the utmost kindness and respect, even if they do not share your faith. Be the best child, sibling, and parent you can be. Let them see the beauty of Islam through your improved character, your patience, and your love. Be a bridge, not a wall. Pray for them, be a source of goodness in their lives, and trust that God can soften their hearts over time. Your good example will be the most powerful form of dawah, or invitation you can give. Thirdly, do not allow yourself to become isolated. One of the greatest dangers for a new Muslim is to be cut off from both their old support system and a new one. Actively seek out good company. Find a welcoming mosque or Islamic center where you can connect with other Muslims. Look for knowledgeable and balanced teachers who can guide you with wisdom and compassion. Build a strong support network of righteous friends who will lift you up when you feel down and remind you of God when you forget. This community, this ummah, is one of the greatest blessings of Islam, so embrace it with an open heart. Finally, always remember that this journey is about love, mercy, and finding peace. Do not get lost in rigid interpretations or the judgment of others. Focus on building your personal relationship with God, the most merciful. Speak to Him in your own words, pour out your heart in supplication, and trust in His infinite wisdom and guidance. The path of Islam has brought a profound sense of peace and fulfillment to my life that I never thought possible. It has answered the questions of my soul and given me a purpose that transcends the material world. It is a journey of returning to our natural state, of finding our way back home to the One who created us. And it is a journey open to every seeking heart.